Welcome back to the Future Agent Podcast. Today is a solo episode because Tony Acosta is getting a leg lengthening surgery done in Thailand this week, so he should be back for next week, looking like 3 inches taller. But today we are talking about all things about why real estate agents don't make it. The hard truth, the reality is that 87% of you that get your license this year will not have it next year. Let's get into it. All right, now listen, here's the reality. 87% of real estate agents that get licensed this year will not be licensed next year. Now, why is that? Now, I think it has to do with what I'm actually doing today, which is getting uncomfortable. See, normally I have a co-guest, I have a co-host, I have somebody that I'm bouncing off of. And in the 3 years that I've been podcasting, this is how I've always done it. So now you're getting boo, raw and unfiltered. We're here today doing something that makes us uncomfortable, which is why I think 87% of agents don't actually re-up their license after the first 2 years. The hard truth is that most of them don't because this is difficult. So let's get into this. Why don't they do it? Let's cover some key points here. Point number one, Tingy, give it to the people. Most agents fail because they treat real estate agent like a job, or they treat real estate, wow, I'm getting emotional doing this solo. I miss Tony so much. Most real estate agents fail because they treat real estate like a job, not a business. The reality, 87% of agents fail within the first 5 years. That's an NAR statistic. Real estate isn't a 9-to-5 job, it's a business. And agents who don't act like a business owners will struggle. How to shift your mindset from employee to entrepreneur and take full ownership of your success. So, getting into this, I think that there are so many agents that get into this for one glaring reason, and that is because they couldn't do anything else very well. That's why I got into it. And when you can't do anything else very well, and you can't talk to people very well, and you can't work for somebody very well, you start to think, okay, what is something I can get into that will allow me to be my own boss? And so many agents get into it with that premise. They get into it for the reason that they want to be their own boss, not understanding that they themselves are not boss material. And so I think early on in my career, this is something that I really struggled with. This is something that I was like, hey, I have full autonomy. Autonomy is something that is super important to me. And so I thought, hey, I'm going to jump into this thing and absolutely crush it. But I didn't view this as a business. I viewed this as a sales job. And I think that while yes, sales is involved in this job, this is not just a game of selling. This is a game of running something that is effective, something that puts you in a situation where you are at your best at all times. And for a lot of people, they don't last long enough in this industry to identify what they're actually really, really good at. And so I can tell you what they're not good at, and that is setting hours, running a business, running this like a business that has a profit and loss statement so that you understand how much money is coming out versus how much money is going out, or sorry, how much is coming in versus how much is going out. They don't understand marketing. They don't understand resources. They don't understand building a business around their skill set. So for me, in my first 2 years of real estate, my first 8 months, I sold 58 homes. In my second year, I sold 60 homes. And those 2 years were just very much running and chasing. And the only reason I was able to sell like that is because I was plugged into a business that was doing really well. But then number two was just the sheer shit, grit, and a whole lot of duct tape. I'm talking holding on for dear life. I'm talking selling stuff that I didn't know what I was actually selling. Just straight hustle. And I think that this is where so many agents get it wrong, is they don't understand the amount of lift that it takes to get this business off of the ground. There are so many agents that don't understand how much, and I think that the bigger issue here is how we put top producers on a pedestal. We put these top producers on a pedestal and we're like, okay, walk me through what your daily routine looks like. And it starts with cold plunging, then it's sauna, then it's daily affirmations, then it's this, then it's this, then it's this. Then I eat 3 grapes and a coconut, and all of a sudden all these sales start to pop up. It's not what this needs to be. I think we have so many new agents in this office and on this team. Right now, I think we have 15 agents sitting right outside this glass from me. And I think that if I could impart anything onto them, and what I try to stress them is that everything that we're training you will help you sell houses. But if you are not putting the necessary time and energy and resources into this, it doesn't matter what we train you. It doesn't matter what we give you. if you are unwilling to put the time and energy into this. And I think that there's so many people that underestimate the amount of lift that it takes to get this plane off of the ground. And like I said, I think it's because those top producers that we put up that talk about the grapes and the coconut that they're eating, they don't talk about what they actually did to get there. So let me run you through. Originally, when I first started, I was working for a builder, and they would give us 3 days a week in a model home. Okay, 3 days a week in a model home, they expected you to generate 2 transactions a month from that. So for me, I was like, okay, if my number one lead source right now is coming from model home traffic, I have to do something to get myself in model homes more. So what did I do? I started calling and lying to some of the older agents on the team that I knew did not want to sit model homes. I would call them and I would say, hey, Jordan, it's Boo. Hey, I have it on my calendar that I'm supposed to cover for somebody today, but I forgot who that was. Was that you by chance? And inevitably, every single time that agent would kind of chuckle and think that they were getting me and say, ha, 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 yeah, it was. Are you good to cover this model home? And I did this day in and day out. I picked up every shift that I possibly could. I picked up every Saturday that I possibly could. And what that allowed me to do was get more time in front of my clients. But that amount of lift, I mean, I am telling you, I did not take vacations for the first 2 years just trying to get this thing off of the ground. The other point that I want to make, originally when I was selling for Edge, Memorial Day, Labor Day, Columbus Day, Indigenous People Day, Jordan, don't get mad at me. These bank holidays, if we want to call them that, these random Mondays where we would have nothing going on, there was no agents that would sit model homes. And I was thinking, hey, if I'm bored on a Memorial Day and I got nothing to do, stuff's kind of open, stuff's kind of closed, I would love to go and shop for a house. So I waited for my very first Memorial Day. And I saw the text go out, hey, who wants to cover the model homes on Memorial Day? Every single agent that was assigned said, nah, I'm good, fam. So I texted my manager. I said, hey, Drew, would you mind if I went and put up a sign on every single model home door that we have and directed them all into one model home? He said, sure, no one else is covering, so that sounds like a plan. I did that, and I ended up writing 4 contracts that day. So I don't say this to brag. I don't say this to be arrogant or cocky. I say this to help because I think that there are so many new agents that get into this business, and they underestimate the amount of force. They understand the amount of just brutal strength, force, whatever you want to call it, that it takes in order to get your real estate career off the floor. We talked to Michael Perry a couple of times about this. He came and trained some of our newer agents, and he tells a story about how every single week for his first 2 years, this dude was throwing 4 to 6 open houses a week at minimum. Excessive? Yeah, maybe to somebody that has a production or has a pipeline. But to somebody that is just starting off, if you are underestimating the amount of lift that it takes to get this thing off the ground, guaranteed you are going to be a part of the 87% not re-upping their license after year number 2 or 5, according to the NAR statistic. Lead generation is a non-negotiable, but most agents avoid it or they give it up really quickly. I'm going to add a little caveat to that. The number one reason real estate agents fail, they don't generate enough leads consistently. Why relying on referrals or broker provided leads is a dangerous game. The best lead generation strategies in 2024 and why you need a multi-channel approach. Okay, let's get into this. There's kind of a couple of points. Jordan's going to make sure that I don't miss any here. Number one, why agents avoid it. 2 reasons. Number one that I hear constantly, we don't want to come across as salesy. We don't want to come across pushy. And so we just sit back and we think, hey, all of these people know that I'm a really, really good real estate agent, even though I haven't done anything to prove that. And so they sit back and they hope. And I think that the worst thing that happens to a lot of new agents is that inevitably what happens for 85 to 90% of agents, I would say, is that when they get into the business, they get a freebie deal or 2. They get a freebie deal or 2 from a family member, a friend, a cousin, an acquaintance of some sort that just happens that the timing works out perfectly and they're buying a house right as you get licensed, so you get a free deal and you think, hey, I am pretty damn good at what I do. I am a really good real estate agent. I have 2 transactions under my belt in the first 2 months. And then what happens is you get this overinflated sense of self-worth to where you think, hey, I am really good at this, when in reality you haven't done anything. So what happens when those 2 deals wear off for a lot of agents is they start to think, hey, this is the norm. This is what's common in this industry, is that there will always be an abundance of deals. But if you look at the statistics in Utah, most agents sold 2 deals last year. So those 2 freebies that you just got, that's it for the year unless you go and force this. We talked about force on the last point that I made. But there's so many agents that are not willing to go out and force this. And if they do go out and force it, this is the other thing that I see happening. This is point number 2. The other thing that happens is that they start to prospect, and then inevitably what happens is if you're doing any form of prospecting whatsoever, eventually, if you do it long enough, leads will start to come in the door. But what happens when those leads come in the door, that agent gets such tunnel vision. All they can focus on is that deal, that lead that they have that just came in the door, and it takes up 75 to 80% of their time. And follow-up goes out the door and prospecting goes out the door the second that they have a lead. So then what happens, they get that lead under contract, they take 45 to 60 days to get that home closed, they stopped prospecting for those 60 days, and then they have a good day for a closing, and then the next day they show up to the office and they're like, damn, I have nothing going on. I have no leads. I have no prospects. I have nobody to even call. Why? Because the second that they got that lead in the door, that prospecting went out the window. So you see these waves start to form in their business. And so what happens is they have, if you look at, like I said, 2 deals is the average good days that the agent has in the year. They have 2 good days and they have 363 days that suck. Here's the reality. If you are not constantly prospecting, even when you have leads coming in the door, you are missing the mark. Now, point number 2 on that slide that Jordan put up. We throw that back up for us, Jordan. Can we do that? Why relying on referrals or broker-provided leads is a dangerous game. Okay, I have to say this with a little bit of tact, because I've been called out on this. I am a massive proponent of what we are doing with Zillow here in this office. I think that we provide the best leads in our industry to agents. Why have we partnered with Zillow? Because to us, it is an expensive lead, but it is also the warmest lead that we can be providing agents. Now, the part that I've caught some flack from different people in leadership at the Perry Group is that I also think that agents should not be 100% reliant on any team-generated lead source. Why is that? Because if you are just in it to get the team leads, then at any point that can shift. We have a couple of points at what point we would pause people, whether they've received too many leads, they haven't, their conversion rate's a little bit low, they decide to leave the team. Like, here's the reality, agents. If you are 100% reliant on your team for leads, you are going to be in a sad spot at some point in your career, whether it's because they pause you or whether because you decide to leave the team. I have seen a lot of agents come and go from this team that thought they were all that plus a bag of chips on the side because they closed 15 deals. When the reality is if you look at the numbers, if you look at where those deals were actually sourced from, 94% of their business was sourced from team-generated leads. What that means is that of the 15 deals that they closed, 13 came from the team and 2 came on their own. So what does that mean? That means that the second that you shut that lead source off, your business is going to disintegrate almost instantly. And it is brutal to get it off the ground again. And most agents get so confused after they leave for a few months. They're like, damn, I can't figure out why I'm not selling anything. Well, here's the reality. You cut once and you measure twice. You guys did the opposite. You measure twice and you cut once, and then all of a sudden you can't figure out where that business went. Now, the third point. What are some lead sources? So what we always advise our agents in here to have at all times is 3 prospecting methods. The first has to be a paid lead source. We have that. We got that covered. You're good if you're on the Perry Group. If you're not, I would advise you find something. And if your broker's just providing a list, those aren't leads. Those are Google PPC leads that they paid 97 cents for 150 leads at 2 cents a pop. That's not leads, that's a list. Second, you have to have an activity-based prospecting method. What that is door knocking, cold calling, or open houses. You have to have one of those 3 things in place that can generate you a deal every 90 days. Now, past that, and this is the one that I think takes longer to put into place than what most people understand or what they estimate when they get into this business, and that is the organic lead gen portion of this. That's your SOI. That's your group of people that rock with you, know you, love you, trust you, and will buy with you for forever as long as you are still in the business. The single best avenue to get in front of those people that I have seen is social media. Social media allows you to be ultra specific, ultra targeted, and ultra niche. If you are not those 3 things, that organic lead source will never provide for you. Now, here's the reality is that if you have your business built on the first 2, if you have it based on activity-based prospecting method and team leads, at some point At some point, inevitably, every single agent is going to get to the point where they no longer want to do those things. I have 4 kids. I got soccer games. I got football games. I got dance recitals that I need to go to. So once again, going back to our theory earlier of what's the first thing that disappears once people start to see a little bit of success in this business, the second that those things start to creep into your life is the second that open houses are going to go away, is the second that door knocking or open houses or cold calling are just going to disappear, and you're not going to have those anymore. So I think most real estate agents realistically have a 2 to 3 year burn rate before that energy is kind of dead, before that activity-based prospecting method energy dies. So if you don't have your organic lead source in place by the time that that dies, you're going to be in a tough spot. Point number 3, Tinky, how are we doing? First solo episode, we doing okay? We keeping the attention? All right. The market doesn't care about your effort, only your results. Hard work doesn't always equal success. Results are what matter. Why agents who work smarter, systems, delegation, automation, outperform those who just hustle. The key habits and daily non-negotiables that separate high producers from struggling agents. We've talked about this already, y'all. We've gone into detail on this one, but I just want to hammer it home because I think it's super important. You can live on hustle in this business for a couple of years, but at some point you're going to have to figure out how to go quicker, faster. So we talked about my production. My first year I sold 58. My second year I sold 60. My third year I sold 75. My fourth year I sold 204. Now, what was the difference between 75 to 204? I started to work more efficiently. I started to work smarter. I hired my own transaction coordinator. I hired my own assistant. At that point, my business was in a place where I could actually do that. If you are not working towards that, and I think the best way to work towards that is to do a needs audit of yourself, a skills audit of yourself. For me, I realized that where I was the best was when I was face-to-face with a consumer getting a contract signed. The second that I had to take time away from that to be doing paperwork, my production would dip. The second that I had to start chasing deals that were not closing on time, my production would start to dip. So what I had to do was put systems in place. I had a 6-figure payroll at this point, meaning that I was paying people over $100,000 a year to help me run my business. I was reinvesting back into my business, and I think that's what so many agents don't allow themselves to get to, and I understand it. If you're doing 2 deals a year, it's damn difficult to reinvest back into your business. So this has to come, I think for resale agents, it's going to be somewhere between 15 to 20 deals a year where you really start to reinvest back into your business and you start to buy some of your time back. Now, when you buy some of that time back, you have a decision to make. Am I going to take that time and chill, or am I going to take that time and double down on the things that I am damn good at? So originally, my clientele was going directly after real estate agents. That was where I generated the majority of my business after I stopped sitting model homes. And so for me, what I realized is that it would take me anywhere from 6 months to a year from the time that I first met a real estate agent to get them to send me my first transaction. The amount of time that it took to get that first deal was massive. So once I started hiring people to fill in some of the other things that I didn't want to do as much, that's what I devoted my time to, and I got to the point where I could start getting deals out of agents within a month of meeting them. It took some strategy, it took some skill, it took some learning, it took some reinventing myself, but that's ultimately what you have to focus on if you are going to work towards a business that is sustainable, is working smarter, not just harder. Point number 4, rejection is part of the game and why most agents can't handle it. How top agents develop a high tolerance for rejection and why that's crucial. The difference between a rejection mindset versus a resilience mindset in sales. How to reframe rejection as feedback and use it to improve your pitch, follow-up, and conversion rate. Now, this is a topic that I am overly passionate about because rejection is just the name of the game. Rejection is honestly just part of what we do here. The reality that you guys need to understand as real estate agents is that when somebody tells you no, that is going to be the most valuable feedback that you can get from somebody. When somebody feels comfortable enough and trusts you enough that they can tell you no, that is going to be, whatever comes after the no is going to be the most valuable feedback that you can get from somebody. Now, you have a decision to make. Am I going to just chalk this up to they're a loser, they suck, I hate them, anything that they say is null and void because they said no to me? Or are you going to take it with as positive feedback and understand that, hey, what this person is saying to me is going to be the best feedback because they don't feel the need to protect my feelings. They don't feel the need to protect my emotions. They understand that they can tell me no, and whatever comes after that is going to be the single best feedback. I tell all of my agents that we are in the business of chasing no's. Obviously, you can go off of the statistics. If you convert at a 10% rate, that means that you have to get 9 no's to every yes. That's a very door-to-door sales approach to it if you want to look at it like that. To me, the way that I would look at this is that every person that tells me no is going to give me better feedback for my business. Here's the other reality too. We talked about the organic lead source. Why I think so many real estate agents struggle to develop an organic lead source is because the reality is that the second that you start focusing, in order to get that organic lead source, you have to get ultra specific and you have to niche down, which I think for so many agents feels like you're cutting your arm off to an extent. It feels like you are removing a piece of your body and saying, it feels like you are going against everything that you know. You're going against everything that you have been taught in this business. But the second that you want to start niching down is the time that you have to start saying no yourself to other business. And I think it's so difficult for so many agents to do because it feels so counterintuitive to how you run the first couple of years in this business. So not only do you need to be chasing no's from other people, you got to be chasing no's for yourself and understanding, hey, I'm not going to do that type of transaction anymore because I am focused on this. 5, if you're not learning, you're falling behind. The market is always changing. The best agents are always learning. Why mentorship, coaching, and continuing education gives you an edge over your competition. The books, podcasts, and resources that have had the biggest impact on top producing agents. So, for me, I have always been a big fan of going outside of our industry for innovation. I think that real estate, for whatever reason, has just sucked when it comes to innovating. There has not been a ton of people that are innovating. There's not been a ton of people that are trying something new. So for me, I have always been a massive fan of going outside of our industry, taking bits and pieces and pulling it into this industry. Some of my best ideas, I would say, have come from books that were not real estate related, have come from podcasts that have nothing to do with real estate, but have to do with mindset, that have to do with a different way to approach a consumer, a different way to create an experience for a consumer. I think about my conversations with Michael McHenry all of the time. This dude has started multiple restaurants that I think are popping, that are places that people want to go, and things that he's taught me about essence and experience and creating a memorable time for people when they are in front of you, I think has impacted me more than any real estate coach that I've listened to, any real estate podcast that I've listened to, any bigger pockets, this or that. Here's the reality, guys. If real estate is in a desperate spot for innovation, we're kind of at this crux, I feel like, right now, where things are getting ready to change dramatically for a couple of reasons. I think the biggest, though, is that buyers and sellers are about to be all-time young. If you look at how many Gen Z, how many different Gen X, Jordan, what generation are you? Gen X? Yeah, how many of these 20 to 25-year-old kids are coming up? The way that they are shopping for houses is entirely different than the way that their parents shop for houses, and the way that their parents shop for houses is entirely different than how their grandparents shop for houses. So identifying who they are, figuring out different ways to get in front of them in an organic and unique way is going to be the name of the game. And here's the reality. There are very, very few real estate agent coaches that I would defer you to and say, hey, go listen to this person about how to get in front of more Gen X buyers. It just doesn't exist. So that wraps up today's podcast. Hopefully Tony's feeling a little bit better from his leg lengthening surgery. I know that he was super excited about that. He was 5'9", supposed to come back at 6'2". We're super excited to see it. Hopefully that means he gets a little bit better at basketball, and we'll see y'all next time on the Future.